Part 1, Viscera, written by Luis Prieto. I have a secret power, so gruesome I've only ever used it twice in my life. The first time was when I was in 8th grade, roughly 12 years ago. I was in Mrs. Gordon's math class, bored out of my mind, and drifting into daydreams. She stood at the front of the classroom, writing on the smartboard, laying out equations I had no hope of understanding. Nobody was really paying attention, but Mrs. Gordon was a nice enough teacher that no one was being disruptive either. As I sat there, arm propped up and head rested, I found myself staring intently at Mrs. Gordon's stomach. I wasn't being perverted or anything weird like that, but something in my mind was drawing my attention to it. It was as if I had lost control of my thinking, only able to focus on my middle-aged teacher's stomach area. I stared and stared, my head beginning to pulse and my eyes burning and watering before it happened. First, Mrs. Gordon stopped writing on the board. She turned towards the class with a pained look in her face. I remember Cassie Ramirez speaking up before anyone else. "Hey, Mrs. Gordon, you okay?" By this point, everyone had turned their attention to the teacher. I was still staring, almost hypnotized. I think there's something wrong with me," Mrs. Gordon said, grasping at her body. I don't. It happened fast. Her stomach began to move, pumping up and down, up and down. She let out a wail and lifted up the bottom of her shirt. Her skin moved and turned almost like something was alive in her. She continued to scream as blood flew from her mouth, hitting Marco Bustamante in the face. There was chaos in the classroom as her belly button suddenly burst and her intestines flew out, splattering on the floor. Blood gushed from her midriff while her lifeless body crumpled to the floor. I broke from my trance as everybody ran from the room, screaming, crying, panicking. I followed suit. Nobody knew what had happened to her. Not the police, not her family, not the other students. But I knew it was me. From that day forward, I knew that I had to be careful and remain in control of my mind. No drinking, no drugs, no more mental slip-ups. I wasn't gonna let my power mutilate anyone again. I made that promise to myself before I met Travis Jennings. Travis showed up my senior year of high school and was immediately a negative presence in the lives of anyone who came into contact with him. He was a mean teen with the worst attitude in the whole school. The other students didn't like him. The teacher didn't. No one did. I tried everything to avoid him, but he had a tendency to find me and make me miserable, beating me up, calling me names, even spitting on me. He made the whole high school a hell. There had been many times I had considered using my power to put an end to him. I'd even imagine it sometimes, stopping myself before falling into the trance. But man, did I want to. I even dreamed about it sometimes, imagining his guts flying out of him and watching him collapse to the floor like Mrs. Gordon had. But this time, it would have been deserved. One day, I had been walking through the halls when I felt a hand push into the back of my head and slam it into the wall. Dazed, I slid to the floor. When I looked up, there he was. "Out of my way." That was all he said as he strode by me. I had had enough. I was going to finish him off. That afternoon, I waited outside the school until I saw him. He lumbered about into the woods on the right side of the school. This was my opportunity. I stalked him between the trees, my bloodlust rising as I felt like a predator after its prey. I lost sight of him briefly before finding him again. He was sat up against a tree, crying. It was more than crying, actually. He was sobbing loudly. Something was wrong. "Hey, are you okay?" I asked. He looked up, angry at first before it faded. "Leave me alone." I thought about it, leaving him there, or maybe going through with my plan. Something was stopping me, however. "No," I said. "You can talk to me." He looked up like an abused dog, tears in his eyes. He was truly suffering, and he let it all out. His father was an abusive drunk who beat him daily, but sometimes, he said, it went beyond beating. If his father couldn't find a woman for the night, well, he'd take advantage of Travis. He let every horrible detail out. "Travis, geez man, I'm so sorry." He continued to sob. "I don't know what to do anymore." "What about like CPS or something? You can maybe—" He shook his head. "That's never worked before. It's always just led to more issues. I'm almost 18, and maybe I can be out of there soon. I know I've always caused problems and been an asshole to you, but I'm sorry. Thanks for listening." And with that, he stood up and walked back the way he came. I continued to sit by the tree, thinking about what I had almost done to him. It was a wake-up call to be more considerate with my powers, to not give in to the temptation. But then, Travis went missing. He hadn't been seen in days, and while the students and staff of the school were relieved, I felt nervous. I still didn't completely like Travis, but he had endeared himself to me, and our conversation couldn't escape my mind. Days turned into weeks. I had hoped he had run off and gotten away from his sick father, off to find a better life. It was the only hope I had, until they found his body. Off to the side, in a field not too far from the train tracks, they found him. Ravaged by birds and coyotes, he was almost unrecognizable. Still, they were able to determine that he had been murdered. Whispers were abound in town as to who did it, and within those rumors a name kept appearing. Seymour Jennings, Travis's father. And not only was he Travis's father, he was also cousin to Sheriff Ron Jennings. There was no hope for justice. Travis's case was technically considered unsolved, but most knew what had happened. With this, I knew it was time to set my new plan into motion. For Travis. I saw his father on the corner of Midkiff and Main, standing idly, not knowing what was coming his way. I looked to him, and for the first time in years, let my mind take over. The pulsing in my brain, the burning of my eyes, I could feel it grabbing hold of me. Power, bloody and evil, but power. Seymour looked up suddenly. It had begun. He looked confused as he laid his hand over his swollen belly. It twisted and turned as he began to scream. "Help! Somebody help me!" A crowd of people rushed towards him as he fell to the floor, his screams echoing in the street. Blood flooded from his mouth, and his stomach inflated. His eyes bulged, becoming bloodshot. He wasn't going to get off easy. I focused more intensely, much more than I had on Mrs. Gordon. His eyes burst from his head, leaving tendons hanging from the eye socket. He squirmed as his arms and legs began to twist, his bones beginning to jut from his flesh. I focused and crushed his ribs. He howled in pain as I did. Finally, it was time for the big finish. His stomach inflated, rising and rising, until suddenly his belly button popped, sending his intestines flying into the air. The crowd of people was covered in his blood and viscera, screaming and running like the students had during class. The trance faded from me. I got up and walked home. Much like with Mrs. Gordon, investigators were baffled. Had spontaneous combustion become a reality for this town? 2 people within 5 years. Unheard of. Ultimately, no cause was found, and it was considered to be some kind of freak reaction to something. Nobody knew what happened, but I did. Part 2. Eviscerated. When I was in middle school, my teacher, Mrs. Gordon, exploded in front of me. Blood from her mouth flew directly into my face, and when she burst, I was covered in her guts. I remember leaving the room in shock. My classmates panicking and running past me. I entered the restroom and wiped myself clean. My hands shook from both adrenaline and fear, and I knew I'd never be the same. I went to therapy, hypnosis, doctors, everything. Nothing could remove those images from my head. Eventually, I learned to live with the thoughts and just try to get on with my life. Slowly but surely, things seemed to return to normal. And then it happened again. 4 years after my teacher popped, when I was a senior in high school, I was out with my older sister Alyssa at a restaurant, enjoying a nice day out. Things were perfect. It was a beautiful day. Was. "Marco," she said, concerned. "What's wrong with that man?" I looked up to see what she was talking about, and my blood ran cold. I began to shake as it was happening again. Mr. Jennings was grasping at his stomach, just like Mrs. Gordon had. He was screaming, blood flying from his mouth. I was triggered into remembering how it felt when Mrs. Gordon's warm blood collided against my face. "No," I said. "No, please." Mr. Jennings collapsed to the ground, his limbs crumpling up, his chest inverting. Then he burst. Alyssa screamed. People began to run. I stood in place, watching. I closed my eyes, covered my ears, and fell to the ground. My chest tightened. I couldn't breathe. The fear I had felt all those years ago was back. Everything went dark. It's been 8 years since that day. 12 years since Mrs. Gordon. I don't leave my house anymore. I can't. The world is a dark and bloody place. Its injustices are burned into my mind, and in 12 years my memory has not faded. But tonight, something terrible has happened. There's sirens going off outside, loud and terrifying. I'm in the basement, cowering in the corner. Alyssa is down here. She's afraid too. He's up there. I know he is. Roughly 6 hours ago, the news was plastered with his image. I knew him. He was in Mrs. Gordon's class with me. I couldn't remember his name, but when I saw what he was doing, all the pieces fell into place. He had been floating in the air, arms outstretched with no expression across his face. He hovered there, menacingly. Reporters, police, agents were under him, baffled. Then, one by one, they began to burst. Their guts littered the streets as he popped them like grapes. People tried to run from him, but it was too late. Everybody in the vicinity of him was eviscerated within seconds. The cameras cut off, and now we don't know what's going on. From what we can see on social media, he's still up there, floating. No word from the government on what they plan to do. This is something bad, something advanced. I can feel it. "Marco, we have to get out of here," Alyssa says, fearful tears falling down her cheek. "We have to leave town." I shake my head. "I can't. He's up there. I can't." She walks over to me and wraps her arms around me. You don't know that it's him. She frowns. I know. I looked up to her. I could tell she was unsure of how to continue. I leaned my head into her. I loved my sister. She was my rock, my support. All we've ever had was each other. That's why I knew what decision I had to make. Leave, I say. Go without me. No, you know I won't do that. You have to. I want you to be safe. I can't go, but you have to. I'm not gonna leave you. I'd rather stay down here than go by myself. I felt tears begin to form. I love her so much. My selfishness wasn't going to get in the way. Okay, I say. Let's go. I'm nervous as I get up to leave. I haven't been out of my house for years, but here I am. There's a surge of bravery within me, but mixed in with it is uncertainty. When I look over to Alyssa, it all makes sense. There's worriment under her features too, but she's holding back. My sister needs me as much as I need her. We don't grab anything before beginning our escape. There's no point in wasting time. As we leave the house, I look back one more time. In the distance, I still see him up in the air. It's a haunting image. I get into the car shotgun, and Alyssa gets into the driver's side. She puts in the key, twists and twists, but it won't start. There's something wrong, she says. What should we do? I look around. Everybody's cars are in the driveway. Something big has caused them to fail. Maybe it was all that ruckus we heard earlier, I say. It sounded pretty bad, almost like a blast. Shit, she says, resting her head on the steering wheel. You're probably right. Let's just book it and run. We get out of the car, and I stop dead in my tracks. He's above us. Run, I say, drawing Alyssa's attention. We have to get out of here, run! When I look over to my sister, I feel the blood drain from my body. Her eyes are wide, a trickle of blood is running down the side of her mouth. No. She screams as blood flows from her mouth. It hits my face, warm, just like before. Painfully, she falls to the ground, her bones splintering out of her skin, twisting, folding. Alyssa! I scream. When I try to run towards her, something holds me in place. I can't move. I see the life leave her eyes as it happens. Her stomach inflates. Then it explodes. For the third time in my life, someone has burst in front of me. For the second time, I'm covered in guts. I fall to the ground. I can move again. I can see him in the air, looking down at me. There's a struggle on his face, displeasure. His head twitches a bit. He seems confused. I knew him in school, not closely, but I knew him. He wasn't like this. He was quiet, kept to himself, but helpful. He seemed well liked by anyone not named Travis. The energy emanating from this being was not the kid I went to school with. Something had replaced him. I continue to look up at him as he begins to fly away. Why have I been spared? Why is my sister, who didn't even know him, dead on the floor? Alexander Hyde, that was his name. I see him continue to float in the sky. He'll stop, look for people. If he sees them, they burst. He's merciless as people plead to be spared. If he hears them, he does not care. I go to Alyssa's body and bring it close to me. I hold it, sobbing. She's an empty husk now. In the distance, I hear screams. Part 3. Vis-A-Vis. Chapter 1, Alexander. If you caused an entire city of people to die, but you weren't in control of your body, would the authorities believe you? Would you believe you? I had awoken in the middle of a street, unable to move, surrounded by soldiers and agents with guns pointed at me. There remained no recollection in my mind of the events that had transpired, but from the piles of guts I could see around me, I could tell what I had done. The soldiers handcuffed me as one of the agents, whose symbol I did not recognize, placed a metal hat over my head, locked it into place, and then motioned for the soldiers to move me. They picked me up and tossed me into the back of a big truck and hauled me off to God knows where. And here I am now in a stark white room with nothing but a pen and a journal. I don't know where I am, but I think I belong here. I don't remember killing all those people, but I do remember what started it. I had been at home resting when I heard the glass break. Startled, I got up to see what it was, and was face to face with a man in a mask. The mask was black and featureless, like something you'd find on sale in a pharmacy around Halloween time. In his hand was a gun. "Don't do anything stupid now," he said. I shook my head. "Leave. I don't have anything of value here." He smiled. "I'll be the judge of that." Everything that happened next felt like it went in slow motion. He pointed the gun towards my head. As his finger slowly began to pull the trigger, I felt the power take over. It worked quicker than I had ever seen before as the gun flew from his hands. The fear crossed his eyes as he was lifted into the air. "What the fu—" His body folded in half, breaking his spine with a sickening crunch. He let out a wail as his limbs twisted, letting out crack after crack. His screams continued as he was flung from wall to wall. I tried to stop, but I wasn't in control anymore. I felt the power taking me over. It had never felt like this before. So mean, so strong. "Please stop. I'm sorry, I can't," I thought to myself. His screams continued as his stomach inflated, wider than I had ever seen before. He burst, draping me in his intestines and painting my wall red. Usually, this is when I'm let out of the trance. Not this time, however. Everything after this is a blur. I see brief images in my head. People bursting, soldiers shooting, destruction as waves of energy emanate from my mind. No memory is concrete, except for one. I'm in the air, I've just bursted someone, and as I look over to my next victim, I recognize the face. Marco Bustamante? I had him in classes back in school. I don't want to burst him. I don't want to burst someone I know. For the most fleeting of moments, I'm able to fight back. It takes every fiber of my being, but I fight. I can feel the pressure building up in me. Am I going to explode? God, I hope so. But the feeling passed, and I continued on my path of destruction. Marco was the only one I could spare. The next thing I remember is the guns to my head. I close the journal and lean against the wall of my cell room. The front of the journal has the logo that the agents wore. I don't recognize it. I run my hand over the embossing. Wherever I am, I hope they can help me. I close my eyes and try to sleep. When I wake up the next morning, I can see people studying me from the door. "Hello?" I say. They don't answer. They don't even move. "Can you at least tell me where I am?" They write something down. Still no answer. Eventually, they walk away. I lean my head back and think, every choice I've made has brought me here. Mrs. Gordon was an accident. Mr. Jennings was on purpose. But what about the intruder? It almost felt instinctual, like a defense mechanism. I can't say for certain I didn't want it, but part of me now wishes I had just let him kill me. I'm lost in thought when I hear the door to my room open. The agents are carrying something. They hand it to me. It's a picture of Marco. "Why was he spared?" the agent asks. I shrug. I went to school with him. They write that down. 14 other people that you killed were schoolmates, they say. I feel sick to my stomach. Why him? I don't know. I wasn't in control. More writing. So you didn't spare him by choice? Well, I guess maybe I sort of did. He was the only one I was able to. Who was in control then? Suddenly, it's like something switches in my brain. I don't have control anymore. "Everybody clear!" the agent screams. They scramble to get out, but one doesn't make it in time. They lock the door. He's stuck in here with me. "Please," he begs to the others, "let me out." "I'm sorry," the agent says. "We can't do that." The trapped agent is pulled towards me. I'm not the one doing it. He claws at the ground, but it's no use. The power is too immense. "Stop!" I can't. I want to, but I can't. Suddenly, he's inches from my face. I can feel my body shake with power. He screams as the skin on his face splits open. The flaps of skin fold over like a blossoming flower. His skull is exposed as I begin to crush it. Jagged lines begin running across his skull. He's still screaming. I crush it as brain matter covers my face. The power leaves and I fall to the ground. I'm knocked out cold. In the darkness of my mind, I'm dreaming. I see myself as a child in bed. I'm 6 years old. There's a noise outside my house that startles me, so I hide under the covers. A light shines brightly through my window. Next, I'm in a room I don't recognize. There's a needle going into my eye. My eyes flicker open. The agent's body is gone, but I'm still in the white room. I'm shaking as I sit myself up. I don't know what I am, why I'm the way I am. I don't know anything. I'm scared, and I just want this nightmare to end. Whatever's in me has ruined me. I'll never be able to live normally. I fold my legs and close my eyes. The power is still there as I concentrate. I build it up inside me. I want to burst myself. It doesn't let me. The power leaves my body, and I am left winded. It's still in me, but I'm not in control of it. It will show itself when it wants to. So now, all I can do is sit here and write in my journal. Nobody has stopped by my cell, and I hope they leave me here to rot. I can't live with myself. I can't live with the things I've done, but I have to. The power won't let me die. Chapter 2. Marco. It's been 5 years since Alyssa passed, and since our city was decimated by Alexander. Officially, it isn't known who was behind the massacre. Well, it isn't supposed to be known. It's more of an open secret, really. The agency that took him has remained tight-lipped on where he is and what was done with him. The public isn't privy to that information. According to sources, even the president isn't. Nobody but a part of the agency or the FBI is allowed to know. Rumors persist that they killed him, but I don't think so. I think they have him locked up somewhere, running experiments on him. The slow process of rebuilding the town and returning to normal life has been troublesome. Uprisings against the government have been attempted, but it's never led to much. Nobody trusts anybody anymore. Everyone now lives under the assumption that more Alexanders are out there, hiding. People with immense power who can't control it and will bring destruction to us all. I don't know about all that, but I hope it isn't true. As for me, I've left the country and gone overseas where I can start fresh. The memories of everything are forever stuck in my head, but I'm looking forward to the future. I've met a nice girl and I'm ready to be happy. I struggle with PTSD from the incidents, and it's put a real strain on my relationship. She asks me to communicate more, to let her know what's going on in my head. I can't talk about it though. I can't express how tired my mind is. Every night I dream of Alyssa. She was the only family I had growing up. With her gone, I feel restless and empty. All I can do is hope that things get better. Chapter 3: Connection. In my dreams he appears. I'm at a restaurant, sitting at a table enjoying dinner with Alyssa and my girlfriend. He walks through the door. Alexander. He sits across from me. Even in my dream, my blood is running cold. Marco, he says. I'm so sorry. I'm looking him in the eyes. He's remorseful. I start to relax a bit. Alyssa and my girlfriend disappear. It's just me and Alexander now. I needed to reach out to you. I needed to apologize. So he's really here, mentally. They won't let me out for everyone's safety. If I can't do it face to face, this is the next best thing. His tone is apologetic, genuine. I don't like that he's in my mind, but I'm open to hearing him. The fear is gone. I can tell it's him and not whatever he had become during the destruction. I can't stay long. It's taking all my energy to be here. When they find out, I don't know what they'll do to me. I'm leaving part of my journal here in your mind. I want you to read it and see that what I did wasn't intentional. I thought about just doing that, but I needed to apologize directly for the things I've done. I nod my head. I forgive you. There are tears in his eyes. I still have one question. Why me? A wistful look crosses his face. Ultimately, he shrugs. I don't know. Something about us is connected. I don't know if it's just because I recognized you or what. Some things are unexplainable, I guess. Even I don't understand what's inside me. His head darts around suddenly. In his world, something is happening. I have to go now. He smiles and fades away. When I wake up, I'm back at home. Finally, at peace. Thank you so much, everyone. Please let me know if you like these longer series stories, and give me a like and subscribe. Have a good night, everyone. Love, the Mistress.